Fishing is a pretty straightforward recreational activity. For those that don't fish on the regular, you still know that the activity requires a fishing rod, bait, and a ton of patience. However, there are quite a few people who have thought outside of the box when catching their dinner. Let's take a look at the most unusual fishing methods known to man. Number 1. Ama. Also known as a type of diving woman, the word ama, or uminchu, stems from the 2,000-year-old Japanese practice. During the Heian period, women would dive for pearls using this method, and would also dive for seafood to help feed their villages. In short, they're essentially a free diver that were taught as young as 12 years old to free dive and fish using this alternate and very archaic method. In modern times, we've become accustomed to simple but beneficial tools, such as bait and tackle, as well as fishing rods, so we barely have to get wet. Because of the rapid fishing technology being produced on the fly, the number of traditional freediving women have dwindled down significantly. Number 2. Noodling. Noodling and ama are similar in the sense where they use archaic techniques to really ensure that you get the catch. Noodling is used primarily in the southern hemisphere of the United States, and not Japan or Korea. When a noodle fishes, they take their hands and put it inside of the catfish's hole. It sounds disgusting, and for some, it's totally justified. Because of the unsustainability in the average fish population within the United States, there are some states that have banned noodling altogether. About 17 years ago, noodling was officially only legal in 14 states, with many of these states proposing restrictions for the hands-on sport. Number 3. Fish wheel. If you're already familiar with the fish wheel method of fishing, you may also know that it was salmon wheel. This fishing method uses a type of device that sits in a river and uses the paddles along its windmill-like design to pull fish up from the water and into the baskets. Upon getting the fish, there's a holding tank of sorts built in to make sure the fish don't flop out within each pass of the water. Unfortunately, this method worked a little too well, and the United States government banned it due to the salmon population dwindling rapidly. When this effective fishing method wasn't banned, the fish wheel would typically be placed near faster-paced bodies of water, waterfalls, and more shallow areas. Often seen in the Columbia River area of Oregon, the fish caught were often used for hungry sled dogs. The fish wheel has a long history in northwestern North America, as the salmon industry was quite the trade that helped blossom dozens of businesses in the 19th century. Indigenous communities and the profitable salmon industry intertwined to set up trade deals before the invention was banned. However, the fish wheel wasn't the only technological invention that was brought to light. Businesses called canning companies brought many types of fishing inventions to the table, including gill nets and shore signing. The process of getting the fish wheel banned also forced the indigenous communities to legally halt trading their fishing grounds for goods. After long battles between corporations, the government and indigenous communities, canning companies were able to use the land they traded for once again. However, fish wheels simply weren't allowed. Number 4. Chinese fishing with birds. Cormorant fishing is a type of traditional Chinese fishing method, where fishermen use cormorants to catch fish for them. These fishermen would train these smart birds during the time of the Sui dynasty by tying snares at the base of the cormorant's throat. In doing so, the birds could grab the fish, but they couldn't swallow as they normally do. Once the fish has been caught, the bird is pulled back and the larger fish can be spit back up for the fishermen. Even though it sounds quite unsanitary, cormorant fishing is still used today for the tourism industry. China wasn't the only ones to use this technique either, as Japan, Korea, North Macedonia, and other regions also caught on. The type of bird varies depending on the location, but they're often related to the Chinese cormorant. Guilin, Chinese-owned Lijiang River, is one of the most notable places where fishermen could use Chinese cormorants for shallow fishing. As for North Macedonia and Greece, Durin Lake was quite the hotspot where both countries could get their own serving of seafood. Both France and England had their brief spell with fishing in this manner, but it didn't last long. Japan's cormorant fishing takes place in over a dozen prefectures because of the regional popularity, despite it not being originated in Japan. Number 5. Co-op human dolphin fisheries. No, this isn't a new type of RPG where you work side by side with marine life to catch fish and complete quests. Co-op human dolphin fishers go as far back as ancient Roman times in Santa Catarina, Brazil. While there were other places that may have used this type of marine-driven method, Santa Catarina was the primary hotspot. Whether men sat in canoes or stood barefoot in the shallow waters, they would wait patiently until dolphins began appearing. The fishermen would then wait for one of the dolphins in the group to emerge from the water and perform a type of sequence that is often seen in the wild. This was often used as a signal to the men for them to throw their nets. When the men would catch fish, some would inevitably slip out of the nets, and they would often be seen as the reward for the dolphins. It sounds like something out of a movie, but dolphins are incredibly intelligent animals. Number 6. Ice fishing. The contest. Everyone's heard of ice fishing, and we know it isn't unique. However, there's a contest every year that holds the largest ice fishing contest. Thousands of people line up to get on the ice to show the world how much fish can be harvested from the world's largest group of ice fishermen. The Baltic conditions are braved by more than 10,000 people annually, adorned in their thickest gear. The contest isn't only to get as many people on the ice as possible, but each fisherman has a score. Those that catch live fish will receive points based on how many are caught. The one who catches the heaviest live fish with their one little hole wins. Anyone who brings dead fish, already frozen fish, or fish that are late will have their points disqualified. The frigid event has been held every year since 1991 at Gull Lake in Brainerd, Minnesota. Do you think you could take the sub-zero temperatures for a cool stack of $150,000? Number 7. Fly fishing with Asian carp. Decades ago, Asian carp, also known as the silverfish, were introduced to southern waters to keep control of the algae. Fast forward to dozens of years later, they've now been dubbed an invasive species. To fish for these incredibly savory silverfish, all you need to do is startle them by moving your boat in the area and watch them fly. Incredibly dense in the Illinois River area, many have proposed shipping the silverfish to Asia to start a profitable business, as the silverfish is incredibly luxurious in Southeast Asia. Be careful as you fish for them though, they just may knock you out. Number 8. Otter fishing. We've heard about dolphin fishing, now we're here to talk about otter fishing. Using trained otters, this incredibly ancient technique originated in Bangladesh, all the way back in the 6th century. In fact, this method was so popular that it's still used in some parts of southern Bangladesh and other parts of the world. First appearing on paper in the Yangtze region of China, this method became so widespread that Marco Polo used this method himself. The European otter and the smooth-coated otter are two types of regional otters used for this fishing. When training them, they must be around 3 to 4 month-old pups, and they were muzzled to stop them from eating the fish. Because of the age and training methods, they had to be domesticated for this fishing technique to work. The otters were placed on a type of leash and chased into the waters with a net, allowing the fishermen to pull them back with their findings. Another technique used submerged nets, with the otters acting as a type of herding animal for the fish to move into the net. Number 9. Remora fishing. By now, you should see that the idea of bait stemmed from ancient practices such as remora fishing, dolphin fishing, etc., except instead of using dead fish, the Zanzibar and Mozambique used live fish to help them catch turtles. These weren't the only Indian Ocean regions to use remora fishing, as Cape York, Australia, and fishermen in the Torres Strait also use this method. When using remora to catch turtles, a rope is tied around the tail and released when the fisherman sees a turtle. The remora then fastens itself onto the shell of the turtle, and then they are both pulled in. Some catches were so large that they required harpooning. Number 10. Veer fishing. Next on our list is a type of fishing called veer fishing. Also known as fish garth, this obstruction is usually placed partially across a river to try and trap passing fish. Typically, the traps would be more towards the intertidal zone, where the tides would see a recession, making it easier for them to be snagged up. With eels migrating downstream and fish trying to swim upstream, many fishermen were successful and have been for more than 8,000 years. By the year 1707, the architecture of the veer was so perfected that Japanese fishermen in the Shimabara Peninsula successfully constructed a veer that was over 1,000 feet in length. Number 11. Remote control fishing. With the invention of remote control devices and drone shipping, this next fishing method shouldn't surprise you, but it may make you roll your eyes. A newer type of fishing method, fishing line is hooked onto the remote control permanently. Using the remote control, the bait is placed onto the line, and then the patience begins. Moving around the boat will cause a bit of trolling amongst the fish and make them curious about the bait. thus making it a bit more successful than your standard